A letter is adding fuel to one of the most controversial debates in the U.S., whether American taxpayers' money was used to fund dangerous research inside the Wuhan lab. An energy initiative is up for discussion at the next G20 summit. It suggests cutting CO2 emissions in half by 2030, but an expert says it could harm Europe, all for China's benefit. Beijing claims the U.S. is sending a majorly wrong message to Taiwan. That's after the U.S. Secretary of State urged UN members to support Taiwan and its possible participation in the organization. TikTok says it doesn't hand American user data over to China, but one company executive's testimony didn't make the grade, according to one senator. And a Chinese-language song has become an internet sensation. It's a satire against the Chinese regime posed as an innocent romance tune. We dissect the lyrics and examine what its metaphors really mean. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A two-page letter is adding fuel to one of the most controversial debates in the U.S. It's the question of whether American taxpayers' money was used to fund a type of dangerous scientific research in a Wuhan lab, the same lab some believe could be connected with the origin of the COVID-19 virus, while others disagree. NTD's Penny Zhou has more.
The letter was written last week by a senior official from the U.S. government's top health agency, the National Institute of Health, or NIH. Sent to Republicans in Congress, the letter disclosed two key pieces of information about studies conducted at the Wuhan Institute of Virology between June 2018 and June 2019. First, the NIH admits it did grant money to a risky study at the Wuhan lab. The study genetically modified a type of natural bat coronavirus. It then used the original and edited virus to infect mice that are genetically modified to be more like humans. It turns out that the modified virus made the mice sicker. But the main debate is this: does this particular U.S.-funded study in Wuhan count as so-called gain-of-function research, the type that makes viruses more infectious to humans? The NIH said it does not fit the definition. The agency said the result of the study is unexpected and not something researchers set out to do, while other scientists and Congress Republicans say it is definitely gain-of-function. They accuse the NIH director and Dr. Anthony Fauci, the director of NIAID, of lying. Both have testified that the agencies have never funded such research.
However, I will repeat again, the NIH and NIAID categorically has not funded gain-of-function research to be conducted in the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Microphone.
Your microphone.
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function.
So
let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans,
right.
You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about.
One thing to stress is that the virus in this U.S.-funded study in the Wuhan lab is not the virus that caused the pandemic. The NIH confirmed that the viruses in the study are not and could not have become the COVID-19 virus. It emphasized that the sequences of the viruses are genetically very distant. The second piece of information revealed how the NIH and the U.S. group that partnered with the Wuhan lab for the study are shifting the blame onto each other. The letter claims that New York-based EcoHealth Alliance did not immediately report to the NIH that the virus had been strengthened, which is a requirement for the funding. It says the group reported it to the agency this August, roughly 2 years after it was supposed to. But EcoHealth Alliance appeared to contradict this claim and said in a statement, these data were reported as soon as we were made aware in our Year 4 report in April 2018. An NIH spokesperson told media outlet Vanity Fair that Dr. Fauci was entirely truthful in his statements to Congress. That's because he did not know details about the controversial study when he testified in July. Experts have called into question whether the NIH has done its job supervising dangerous research and sharing it with the public in an open manner. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
The National Institutes of Health has made a change to its website. They wiped a detailed explanation of gain-of-function research known as G.O.F. Why now, as lawmakers accuse the agency of lying to Congress about this research? NTD's Miguel Moreno has the story.
Not long ago, you could visit the NIH's website and read a detailed explanation of gain-of-function research. That's the research Dr. Anthony Fauci and Dr. Francis Collins of the NIH have denied funding in China.
The NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute
Do they fund
of
Dr.
Virology.
Barrick?
But the NIH has wiped this detailed explanation from its website. That happened around October 20th, the same time the NIH admitted they funded research in China that strengthened the virus by modifying it. According to some experts, this means the NIH funded gain-of-function research. The agency's new page says the research they fund is a type of so-called gain-of-function research. Dr. Fauci, who's accused of lying to members of Congress, has changed his stance. He went from saying the NIH didn't fund gain-of-function research in China to saying the NIH didn't fund gain-of-function research of concern. Here's the doctor on ABC.
Neither I nor Dr. Francis Collins, the director of the NIH, lied or misled about what we've done. And the research was very strictly under what we call a framework of oversight of the type of research. And under those conditions, which we've explained very, very clearly, does not constitute research of gain of function of concern.
An NIH spokeswoman told the Epoch Times that the information on the old page was being misused, used incorrectly, and creating confusion. She also said the info was updated to provide clarity on the scope of the framework. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
China is not expected to appear at two upcoming global summits. That's according to a national security advisor. Here's NTD's Kevin Hogan with more on that and a potential meeting between Biden and Chinese leader Xi Jinping.
The G20 summit is this weekend in Rome. From the White House on Tuesday, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan announced who will and who will not attend.
I would point out that neither China nor Russia will be attending the summit in person at the leader level, largely, it seems, due to COVID-19. The U.S. and Europe will be there, and they'll be there energized and united at both the G20 and COP26, driving the agenda, shaping the agenda as it relates to these significant international issues.
The COP26 is the United Nations Climate Change Conference. It starts Sunday and lasts about 12 days. Typically, China attends climate conferences. That's so Beijing can make sure other countries are following strict climate rules. Meanwhile, China puts out more greenhouse gas emissions than the U.S. and all other developed nations combined. Sullivan said Biden is making arrangements to meet with Communist leader Xi virtually by the end of the year.
President Biden does believe it's important that he have the opportunity to have a face-to-face engagement with Xi Jinping, and if it's not possible in person because of Xi's travel constraints, doing it by virtual meeting is the next best thing. That's what we're intending.
Sullivan says diplomacy at the leader level is important. That's to manage U.S.-China relations during intense competition between the two countries.
The Paris Agreement and Europe's green transition will be on the table for discussion at the G20 summit. While the representatives of some European countries are supportive of new energy initiatives, economists have mixed reactions. NTD's David Vives spoke to an economist who says this is a cancel economy agenda that may harm European nations to the benefit of China.
Can all G20 countries be climate neutral by 2050? The European Parliament said last week it will push an accelerated climate action agreement at the upcoming United Nations Climate Change Conference, also known as COP26, which is kicking off at the end of the month. One of the objectives is to cut CO2 emissions by at least 55% by 2030. But the transition will come at a price. The European Court of Auditors estimates that EU countries will have to bear the cost of over €1 trillion over the next 9 years. Economist Philippe Erlin published a study earlier in October called Cancel Economy: Why the Energy Transition is an Economic Disaster. He examined the costs of making the green transition and says the outcome might come at too high a price.
The objective of lowering CO2 emissions by 55% implies lowering GDP growth by 2 to 3%. This means gas prices will increase. The subsidies on electric cars will be a really huge cost, and then there are subsidies for wind and solar plants. 2 to 3% is actually really huge.
According to Erlin, the subsidies for the green transition will weigh heavily on taxpayers who might suffer from inflation. Moreover, other measures pushed by the European Parliament might shake up the automotive industry, such as a transition to 100% electric cars by 2035. According to Erlin, this will be highly beneficial to China.
China never succeeded at selling cars in Europe. They never had the technology to challenge the European brands. Now China owns 80% of the rare steels that are necessary to build electric cars. China will manage the electric technology, so they will likely be able to flood the European market with Chinese car brands, while the car industry in Europe is devastated.
These measures are unfair, considering that Europe is only responsible for around 7% in carbon emission worldwide, compared to China's 28%. That's according to a 2019 report. Additionally, under the Paris Agreement, China isn't obligated to reduce its carbon emissions until after 2030 because it's classified as a developing nation. COP26 will start in Glasgow on October 31st. David Vives, NTD News.
China on Wednesday condemned the U.S. for pro-Taiwan remarks made by its Secretary of State. In a statement issued Tuesday, Antony Blinken urged United Nations member states to support Taiwan's robust participation in the UN system. Blinken also tweeted the same day, saying Taiwan is a critical partner to the U.S. and a democratic success. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian slammed the statement. He said it sends the wrong message and poses a huge risk to U.S.-China relations. Blinken's statement came 2 days after the U.S.-Taiwan virtual discussion on expanding Taiwan's participation in the UN and other international organizations. In a Tuesday hearing, a TikTok executive denied giving U.S. user data to the Chinese Communist Party. But Senator Ted Cruz accused him of withholding information as he failed to directly answer yes or no questions.
That is binary. There's not a maybe.
Senator Ted Cruz attended a congressional hearing focused on social media app TikTok Tuesday. He confronted TikTok executive Michael Beckerman as he testified about Chinese espionage. In its privacy policy, TikTok specifies that the company will share all information collected with affiliates of its corporate group. But Beckerman refused to directly answer the senator's repeated question whether TikTok considers ByteDance, a Beijing-based Chinese Communist Party affiliate, to be part of its corporate group.
Is this company another affiliate as defined in your privacy policy? That is binary. There's not a maybe. It's yes or no.
Senator, the way I answered, I'm not aware that that is the answer to the question.
Okay, so you're refusing to answer the question. That does not give this committee any confidence that TikTok is doing anything other than participating in Chinese propaganda and espionage on American
Senator,
children.
that's not accurate. And again, I would point you to
if it were not accurate, you would answer the questions, and you have dodged the questions more than any witness I have seen in my 9 years serving in the Senate. That is saying something, because witnesses often try to dodge questions. But you answer non sequiturs and refuse to answer very simple questions. That, in my experience, when a witness does that, it is because they are hiding something.
Earlier in the hearing, Senator Marsha Blackburn voiced similar concerns about TikTok's data collection and the potential for Beijing to access that information. In reply, Beckman denied any involvement from the Chinese Communist Party, claiming the company doesn't share U.S. user data with the Chinese regime. The hearing was held by a subcommittee of the Senate Commerce Committee. It aimed to survey the impact of media platforms on children. Executives from YouTube and Snapchat also testified.
The U.S. is expelling a major Chinese state-owned phone carrier. The firm, called China Telecom, must stop providing services in the U.S. within 2 months. That's under an order approved Tuesday by U.S. regulators. The Federal Communications Commission cited national security concerns and warned that state control of the Chinese company provides the regime an opportunity to engage in espionage against the U.S. The Chinese firm has provided telecom services in the U.S. for nearly 20 years. In a statement, it called the U.S. decision disappointing. It is the latest Chinese telecom firm to be targeted by U.S. regulators over national security concerns. Last year, U.S. regulators labeled Huawei and ZTE as threats to communications networks, making it harder for U.S. firms to buy equipment from them. And they added 3 others to the list in March. The U.S. also revoked Chinese state-backed firm China Mobile's license in 2019. 2 others, China Unicom Americas and Pacific Networks, are also in the process of being expelled. In all cases, U.S. regulators cited national security risks that these Chinese companies could spy on the U.S. A Chinese language song has become an internet sensation, gathering over 10 million views in less than a week on YouTube. It's a duet satirizing the country's communist regime, posed as an innocent romantic song. The singers are Malaysian singer Naim Wee and Australia's Kimberly Chen. Why is it so popular? The lyrics contain a range of tropes that are trending on Chinese language social media. We will offer a nearly line-by-line dissection of the references it mentions. The song did not waste 1 second to begin taking jabs at the regime. It starts with a message warning, be cautious if you are a fragile pink. That's referring to China's sensitive and jingoistic online warriors, who are often called Little Pink. They typically leave aggressive comments on Chinese and foreign social media against people who hold negative views of the Chinese regime. The cotton in the footage is a reference to the Chinese regime using the ethnic minority group Uyghurs as forced labor to pick cotton in the northwestern region of Xinjiang. Then a flag bearing the online insult NMSL. That's the Chinese pinging initials of what directly translates to "your mom is dead." Little Pinks frequently wish death on the mothers of those they believe have insulted China. You never want to listen to people, but just launch constant counterattacks. I am not quite sure how I've offended you. You assume the world is your enemy. What appears to be a couple complaining about each other is actually taking jabs at the easily offended Little Pinks. Then the next line, you claim that I belong to you. Don't deny, go home quickly. You want me to explain our inseparable relationship. This refers to the Chinese regime's claim over the democratic island of Taiwan, saying it's an inseparable part of China. The regime also often asks Taiwan to return home and threatens to invade if it doesn't accept CCP rule. The apples on the table likely reference Hong Kong newspaper Apple Daily. The outlet was shut down after police stormed its office and arrested its owner for supporting the city's pro-democracy protests and its print criticism of the Beijing regime. The open restroom door with the panda inside makes fun of the fact that many Chinese public restrooms don't have doors. Then the camera shows a bat toy, referring to the origin of COVID-19, which may have something to do with bats in China. The regime often criticizes those asking for an investigation into the origins of the virus in China as anti-China racists. The next lines, it's illegal to breach the firewall, you'll be missed if the grandpa discovers it, are making fun of China's internet censorship tool, the Great Firewall. The Chinese regime has made it illegal for people to use software to bypass the wall and browse foreign websites, which can land people in prison. Someone will be missed is a phrase Chinese netizens often say to people who have irritated the CCP and therefore might be in imminent trouble. The meme comes from Communist leader Xi Jinping's 2017 New Year's speech, referring to Chinese soldiers who died for the regime. Xi's speech footage has been made into GIFs and spread on the internet. Carrying cotton and collecting his favorite honey, Common Prosperity, worked hard combat poverty, and the leek farm received 1,000 yuan salary. I'm so happy. Common prosperity is a phrase Xi Jinping promotes to guide his crackdown on different sectors and force big corporations to donate their wealth to the regime. Ordinary Chinese people often refer to themselves as leeks. That's to imply they are just faceless vegetables waiting to be harvested by the regime or the rich and powerful. The 1,000 yuan refers to China's 600 million people with a monthly income of 1,000 yuan, which equals $140. The meager number was revealed by Chinese Premier Li Keqiang last year. It's seen as ironic in the face of the regime's frequent claims about how great their economy is. Censor all sensitive terms, otherwise I'll be sent for re-education and farm hammy melon. Swallow the apple, cut off pineapples. Hammy melons are a type of famous fruit from Xinjiang. Re-education refers to Xinjiang's so-called re-education camps, which are actually concentration camps where the regime persecutes ethnic minorities. Apple is again referring to the regime's suppression of press freedom by shutting down Apple Daily, while pineapple refers to Beijing banning Taiwanese pineapple imports as a way to politically pressure Taiwan. Stop stealing from the world, you want me to bow, I can't do that. This refers to China stealing intellectual property from other countries. And the second line simply expresses that the rest of the world doesn't want to succumb to the CCP. Weibo accounts for both singers were blocked in China soon after the song was released. But their video has gone viral in regions outside of China, including Taiwan, Hong Kong, Malaysia, and Singapore. Namewee said on his Facebook page that he had made no mention of China in the entire song. Quote, yet you think every word and phrase is an insult directed at you. The Chinese Communist Party is tightening its control over every sector in China, and at the same time, it's attempting to take control of people's minds and some say their souls. At Monday's Hudson Institute Forum, a group of experts examined the regime's war on religious freedom.
This is something we only get to see in churches in China. Images of Communist Party leader Xi Jinping in the center, surrounded by CCP flags and political slogans. That's just one of the many things Beijing is doing to faith groups in China, on top of jailing Muslims, burning Bibles, and forcing monks to wave the CCP flag.
China is really waging a war not just on any particular religion, but against religion itself.
On Monday, the Hudson Institute held a forum with people from various faith and religious groups. Together, they discussed the big picture of religious persecution in China today. The genocide of Uyghur Muslims has brought the situation to light. The persecuted groups include Muslims, Christians, Falun Gong practitioners, and Tibetan Buddhists. Following Xi's directive in 2018, houses of worship in China are required to uphold the party's rules, which include censorship, high-tech surveillance, and restricted membership. This year, Beijing ordered religious leaders to support the Communist Party's practices, leadership, and core values, even in sermons and teachings. The Communist Party, which is officially atheist, has for decades tried to erase every trace of faith in China, except for the party itself.
Who is your spiritual leader? Is it the 14th Dalai Lama?
Xi Jinping. One of the common things that I've heard from them is that who is your savior? The motherland, the Communist Party. Who is your God? Xi Jinping.
That's what Uyghur American attorney Ner Tarkel recalls from an internment camp in China's Xinjiang region. He eventually got out and claimed asylum in the U.S.
When you force a people who have been practicing a religion, believing in God for so long, to switch to a human being, that in of itself is a tremendous torture.
In Xinjiang, authorities have put in place a massive police state for the Uyghur Muslim community. They have imprisoned an estimated over 1 million residents. According to the Chinese regime, Uyghur Muslims are one of the 5 groups it sees as a threat to its rule. The rest are pro-democracy activists, Taiwanese nationalists, Tibetan dissidents, and Falun Gong practitioners. Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a spiritual practice that attracted millions of practitioners in a matter of years. The level of popularity worried the Communist Party. It banned Falun Gong in 1999 and started a campaign persecuting practitioners. Falun Gong practitioners say millions have been incarcerated and had their organs harvested for transplants.
They incarcerate a lot of prisoners of conscience, right, including Falun Gong practitioners and Uyghurs, so they can treat them as an organ farm.
Lin is the spokesperson for the Falun Dafa Association. He was detained in China for the practice. In 2000, he was released under a U.S. campaign on his behalf. Lin says for decades, the CCP has been suppressing the group through methods such as brainwashing, torture, forced labor, and forced organ removal. And such practices have been applied step by step to other religious groups. He added that some international organizations remained silent and even abetted the CCP.
You would see the impact of the subversion of China's influence operations here in the United States. You would hear American human rights advocates talking about how the Falun Gong was a cult.
Yeah.
And to say, wait a minute, where'd that come from?
Beijing's persecution of these groups has continued and intensified. According to human rights lawyers in China, Falun Gong practitioners are being arrested more and more frequently in recent times.
The Chinese government had a special forces group that literally went around the world to attack people. Well, we've known they've been doing that for years, and if you don't think they're doing it here, of course they're doing it here in the United States.
Robert Destro is a representative from the U.S. State Department. He says to this day, the Communist Party sees Falun Gong as an existential threat to power. According to an international human rights report this year, more than 100 cases of religious persecution were reported in China from July 2020 to June this year, double the number from last year's report.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.